Boom. And we are live. What's up, everybody? It's GMrDrew here to welcome you to another episode of the Andrew Chesky Experience. It's going to be episode 452. And yeah, man, we're gonna start on a new page in the sketchbook. You'll see I zoomed all the way out so you can, because I've been thinking about something. I want to draw something, and I don't know how much I want to draw it. Um, So I'm just gonna start the ballpoint and working on it that way. So you'll see me break down the entire page, throw all the little squares that I like to keep myself working in. That way I keep zones of interest as I work on one piece to kind of cover the whole page. It's a bit much. I wonder if I want to just do four squares. You know what I mean? Or maybe not even the full page, but maybe just like tall ways all the way up. Maybe leave a few sections on the side available like that. We'll see. We'll see. Um, so I think what I'm gonna be doing on this stream is jumping around a bit. I want to work on one video, finish it up because it's almost done. So we're gonna be jumping in doing some illustration stuff, some video editing stuff. Um, Let me pull that up. So yeah, it'll be a video editing, illustration, and I'll talk about The Last of Us. Let's talk about The Last of Us for a second. And uh, I got the concept art books, so I can even pull those out if I feel the need to. I don't think I need to though. Consensus episode one, I talked about it before. I thought the first half was so strong that I wasn't even like prepared for the second half when they did the time skip. Uh, but it was, it was just really strong. But by the time it got to the second half, I was exhausted. To rewatch it like 10 times. Episode two, I I fell in love with Tessa's character a little bit because I was like, it's interesting to realize, oh, they're not gonna be telling this story from Joel's perspective. They're gonna be telling the story from like the world's perspective around Joel. Obviously, the focus is Joel and Ellie, but it's not telling the story. At least the HBO series isn't telling the story directly from his perspective. Really interesting that Tess was like the leader. When I watched the video game, it seemed like they were kind of together. So it seemed like Tess leader, and I thought it was great because it it made Joel look like the Toad. You know, Joel was little Toady. You know, and I thought that was super cool. Uh, um, so I was kind of like, since I watched it so many times, I was looking at the dialogue between Joel and Ellie, and I was gonna see if like how are they gonna approach it. But because Tess was the leader, it was a good way to break the ice between Joel and Ellie to have Tess there. And I don't know how much the video game really did that. It told a really good story. It seemed like Tess was more just equals and like equal partner with Joel. Either way, I just thought that that was interesting because then it makes the load seem a little bit more heavier on Joel. The fact that because if you watch the video game, you know the story there. We kind of just do little things like that to tweak the perspective just a little bit more. Is like, oh wow, I didn't see it that way, but think about Joel and his daughter, and then you just see Joel and Ellie, and it's like, oh, okay, I can see the comparison right there. The type of load that Joel's carrying, but when he's the Toad, it's like now this was absolutely thrust into him. The responsibility of carrying this cargo, and it's like, okay, this is how they story of these two, the rocky relationship, and how they could do it, how they could just tell, their two the two of them being together but not tell it like a video game, and having to think about him and Tess way more than thinking about him and his daughter. It's like, wow, That's interesting. Uh, that definitely came up a lot more in episode three, the Nick Offerman episode, and yeah, Nick, great episode, strong episode. I cried at the end. Um, so it's a good episode. It was good TV. I was all like getting creeped out. It was funny. Uh, but it was interesting, and I like the diversion. I like how they're diverting from the video game. It's super cool. My initial thoughts when they announced that they were making a show, I was like, too soon, way too soon. Even if it had been 10 years, even though the generation had grown up, even what I mean, like all the people who were kids back then, like me, are adults now, and then it's like, you know, it's such an adult themed story. It's being an adult now, looking down and seeing Ellie like a really young kid, and then it's like, oh man, this show is really grown, and now realizing like kids are probably watching this show. It's like, ooh, like like it's wild. Um, so yeah, episode three, it really brought up the whole uh, hmm the other people's perspective thing. You know what I mean? I talked about earlier how I was like, man, they're probably going to tell all these episodes. They'll probably have a focus on all the characters that they deal with. And I wonder if I even talked about where I think they're going to end the season. Because, I mean, they're obviously pushing, HBO is obviously pushing a whole lot of content out there. I wouldn't be surprised if they just planned on making, uh, in order to tell the entire story of the game from where the game starts and ends, for the series to start and end, I wouldn't be surprised if they already plan to throw multiple seasons into it, and try to find chapters in the video game uh, that could serve as finales in seasons. And uh, something I started thinking about was, because I've been rewatching the series over and over and over. Joel is really focused on getting to Tommy, like really focused on that. Like that's wild to me. Thinking that for I feel like in a video game, like I said, the diversions are so great. How they're just telling the same story, but just there's a movie called Super that the guy from The Office, he played a superhero. It's a dark theme story. The director was the guy who did Kick Ass, I believe. Um, he did this movie called Super, and I forget his name. Uh, Rainy, I forget his name. Uh, there was a really good scene in that movie where him and the sidekick are talking to one another, and they were comparing their vigilante lifestyle to the comic books, and after all from the climax moments of vigilantism, what do you do with all the energy? You know what I mean? That high that you get from that. And he had explained to her that it's like, no, these are the moments between the panels. It's like you book and you have panels there, and obviously it's to tell the story and whatnot, and we know that there's time passing by. Sometimes we're told how much time, sometimes we're not, but it's a story. The time usually moves forward unless you're Nolan. uh um so yeah, I think what HBO, a really great thing that they're doing is they're telling the story between the panels being the video game. Look at me, I'm hitting the microphone. I set the microphone down from over there. It might have been too far away, so hopefully this is picking me up a lot better. Uh, so yeah. They're telling the story from a different perspective. So now Joel's like seems to be really adamant about getting to his brother. I wouldn't be surprised if him or brothers can't being the finale. You know what I mean? If it's 10 episodes long, we're 4 episodes in. You know, I kind of estimated, 2 episodes per other characters' perspectives, and then like maybe 3 episodes of just like a really strict Joel and Ellie thing. Um, while Tess was alive, Joel really a main character, but how they're right. He seems to be just like that reluctant B character who's just like, fuck, I got this burden I gotta carry. And I just think that's really interesting. Because in the game, when you play him and you're doing all the gnarly stuff and you're just like a machine, Joel feels he seems unbreakable in the video games, Because it's like, even who knows if you die in the game or not, but you know what I mean? Like, you get that power trip in the video games where in this show just seems to be showing like the human side of it. So episode 3, uh, just telling Bill's story. What are their names? Frank, Bill and Frank. I thought it was cool, man. I, I watched it so many times. I started thinking, I'm like, where are the monsters? Like like I could only imagine like they're doing their last day, and then like one of them trips a wire and comes in and just kind of like is moaning in the background, walking by. Like, it's the apocalypse. That shit looked too clean. They was living real good. That shit was crazy. It was a good episode though. Um, but yeah, just really focusing on them, and then even that, the whole way that they twisted it, um, and then having that note, and just bringing up Tess one more time, just bringing up Tess one more time, and it just it it took Joel from like having that episode with just him and Ellie, without Tess, even though there was like the flashback, but there no, whatever. It's just Joel and Ellie now, but Joel still is being like this like toady character rather than like the dude, the protagonist. Uh, Having that letter and just being like the message that this story is sending. Save who you can. Tess is like, save who you can. Bill's like, save who you can. Uh, Joel's really focused on his brother, trying to save his brother. And it's just really good. It's just really good how they're just like, telling the story between the panels, because it's all like so chill and relaxed, where the video game is all action. It's in stealth, you know what I mean? But the storytelling, the story between the panels, Joel not really seeming like the front man protagonist. uh he's just like the heavy in the background. uh it's a really good power dynamic too, to see Joel and Ellie together. uh I drew the picture of Ryu and Sakura, and now I'm even thinking about Dark Knight Returns, Batman, and the redheaded girl Robin. Like, it all just seems to be right there. Like, all of that, those 3 stories, they all just seem to have the same gravitas to them or something. You know what I mean? So, Pedro Pascal. Another thing, I was tripping the other day. I was thinking, I was like, yo, this man is Oberyn Martell. Like, dude, come on. When I saw Oberyn Martell, I was like, yeah, that man flamboyant, but that man lit. You know what I'm saying? And it was like crazy. So then you see him in the other movies, and then Narcos and stuff like that. You're like, okay, he's playing like a regular dude. You know what I mean? He's a regular cop in the '90s or in the '80s or whatever it is. Uh, You know what I mean? And then you see, but they also had like other actors in that show, like Kick and Wang and the other dude who played like the Marvel bad guy. Um, a lot of good actors. So it's like, you know what I mean? You seen Pedro Pascal around, gets the Mandalorian helmet on all day, like, you know what I mean? So he's just walking with a limp. You know what I'm saying? And then, yeah, to see him as Joel now, to see the whole career trajectory. Um, that's wild. That's wild, man. Uh, so to see him as this old, grizzled, 56-year-old, uh, heavy, toady, carrying a burden, just trying to go save his brother, following the theme of the story. Uh, yeah, I think by the time he gets to his brother, that would be a good thing. It kind of makes sense. The first episode started with him. You know what I mean? Uh, and then Joel's whole thing is like, I'm gonna get to my brother. So it kind of makes sense that the finale would be when they get to the brother, which I don't know how far into the game that is, but I do remember that whole segment of like where they're at. But they've been doing so many diversions, you know what I mean? You don't know like how they're gonna do it. Episode 4, this last one that just came out, they dang they did one of those Joel and Ellie focused episodes. It was so crazy. I only watched it once because I was like, if I put it on again, I'm gonna sit and watch it because it it was the first time they played some scenes, a couple of scenes from the video game. Your watch is broken. You know what I mean? What was nice about that one though was the daughter being like your shirt's inside out. You know what I mean? Having like the young girl call him out on something. You know what I mean? Like, hey man, you ain't tight. Like you're losing it. Um, it- just throwing sprinkling little extras in there. You know what I mean? So I gotta take back the too soon comment. You know what I mean? When I was just like too soon, even though I was like, if they did do it, they would have to do something proper. I had a thought of like after that first episode, the first half of the first episode, when they kind of do the time jump. Uh, I thought I was like, man, I would really love to see Joel and Tommy's adventure. Episode 4, they kind of talk about it, where it's a Joel and Ellie episode, so they're talking. It's a whole lot of dialogue between the two of them. Finally, it's probably the most dialogue between the two that we got so far. Like this episode alone probably has more than the first 3 episodes altogether between Joel and Ellie. Um, that'd be an interesting thing to look into, to see the amount of time and dialogue they've done. I've broken down some TV shows. Like the one I did most recently was like the Watchmen TV show, and it's really interesting to break down the show and like kind of reverse a script out of it, and just write it down as I'm watching it. I know that the shows don't follow the scripts exactly, so the script that I'm writing is based off the show, which is gonna be mad different from the original script. But like I've done that. I think it might be an interesting thing since I'm enjoying this show so much to kind of see and really study how they're doing all this character interaction and the amount of time these characters are getting, because in the game you're Joel all day and until you're Ellie. Uh, that's pretty much it. In this show you're everyone else. In this show you're the daughter. In this show you're Tess. In this show you're Marlene. In this show you're Bill and Frank. In this show, man, episode 4, it was really Joel and Ellie focused, but they also really focused on the enemies. Something that the second game, the sequel, did that the first game didn't do was like start giving names to the enemies, allowing them to react to one another, call out to one another, seem like they were people that actually interacted with one another, that they're an actual group. Um, Focusing on the enemies in episode 4. In the behind the scenes stuff, they talked about it, so I'm not saying anything special, but um, they talked about how they wanted the enemies to appear. Uh, they wanted the enemies to appear like human and see what like a society would have looked like had it fallen or crumbled or got taken over, and this person's the leader. But these are still people. You know what I mean? The show's doing that. The second game did that over the first game. Um, Video games are really gnarly. One of my favorite games of all time. I always think about it. Manhunt. Manhunt is a crazy game. I love that game. Uh, the video game, the first one, it was so brutal. It was a brutal game. Uh, but yeah, games are super gnarly. Where I feel like a lot of games following Manhunt, like did the Manhunt thing, but they just didn't go as hard or heavy as Manhunt did. The first game of The Last of Us, I'm not gonna say it went as hard as Manhunt did, but it went hard like it. And you know, when the sequel humanized the enemies, uh, and the dogs and the animals, oof. Um, yeah. Uh, it, it it stung a lot of people. Um, the TV show episode 4. Oh, the enemies. Oh, the enemies. The poor enemies. What, I've been talking 30 minutes? Yeah, the enemies, man. They well, one of them, they had a lot of bullets. That's one. I was like, God damn, they shooting a lot. I feel like if I was in a pandemic apocalypse, I'd be holding on to every bullet. I wouldn't just be like throwing down cover fire. Yeah, they really humanized the enemies. They not even gonna talk about it, but the way they handled it was so good because now I don't even know if they did this because when you play the game, you see the enemies reacting and doing the whole thing that they were programmed to do is it and being humanized like that. They humanize enemies in the show, but to see Joel and Ellie's reaction to it, I don't know if the games ever really showed their reaction to it. I think a lot of it might have, if they did, it would have been a voiceover while you're playing, like just a line would have been said. But I don't think there was ever any really focus of sympathy or empathy towards the enemy post action scene. You know what I mean? Obviously, when you're in the middle of, you, duck, dip, dive, dodge, duck, dip, doing all that stuff. Um, uh, yeah, uh, I think they would have. Anyway, the show's good. I'm glad they did what they did. It's impressive. It's it's impressive to see Druckmann building building. He did some art, and then he did something else built right on top of it, and then he did something else, and he's building right on top of it. I'm already starting to think about like the future of where does all this go. Uh, I mean, because this guy just keeps building and reinventing, and I mean, that's what it is. I mean, my last live stream, I talked for an hour. I think I'm done talking now. Uh, But yeah, the last stream I talked for an hour, and I talked about how my art is beginning to feed itself. Well, that's exactly what Neil Druckmann's doing. He's taking something and he's just building on top of it. Uh, I think some of the direction is a little funny, but other than that, man, I'm really liking the approach. Uh, so so yeah, man. The Last of Us review. Is going well. It's getting better. It's getting better. Getting better. And the actress playing Ellie, you get the girl from that little girl from Game of Thrones, the Mormont girl. It was an automatic win. I forgot that she had that British accent. Uh, I was watching the behind the scenes after this episode. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. She's British. She's the Mormont girl. You know what I mean? So yeah, kudos to her. But I kind of knew she was gonna be great. I mean, who didn't? So, all right, let's. Okay, so we'll let that play. We'll let that render in the background. Starting with a completely blank page outside of the bled through ink. Back when I was just drawing, and it made sense to have the microphone right there by the camera right here. But now that I'm like out and about and I'm moving this way and that way, I guess I finally need to actually use the microphone stand. Yeah, let's do little by little. And also, Instagram posts and a lot of the internet works well with square posts. Cameras like Zack Snyder uses IMAX cameras, and they're more square in ratio. Uh, Old TVs used to be square. Like a lot of media is done in squares, and then you can always crop the square out to turn it into a rectangle to be portrait or landscape if you wanted. You just have to play with your rule of thirds a little bit more. Uh, and that's all Zack Snyder does did when he made his Justice League. He shot it in IMAX, but he had to play with the rule of thirds in order to be able to release it into theaters or to release it onto your TV. That's too bad. Fuck it, let's get into this drawing, man. Let's talk about what I wanted to talk about. This is why I love doing these live streams now with the video editing. I don't have any more fear about like, oh no, it's not being entertaining for 5 seconds. Uh, yeah, man. I wanted to draw, like I said, take up this whole page because what I wanted to draw has like layers to it. I kind of wanted to take this the iceberg from the last stream, and see how everything is like layered up. I kind of wanted to just work on the surface layer. So taking this layer just up top, just above the water. And these things that just kind of float along the water, sticking out like fingers or something. And my main goal here uh, you could already see it, like the layer coming together, how it's almost built like the wedding cake that like all of this is, or like trying to pick up all this. It's just zooming in on it. Now what I wanted to really focus on, I'm looking at the two books that I showed before is past stream, the this beautiful book. Hey, let's see if I can do this. And I was just like, oh yeah, the Karja. I believe that's what they're called. They were like the real structure builder guys from the game. So uh, going through their book, they got all these like the Karja town. So kind of like look at this whole kingdom, this castle on these rocks. Like look at the layering, happening here. You could even almost see like a warship that's kind of here, and then like the captain's cabin would probably be like up here somewhere, and it's like almost built like this, but it's just a structure in a rock. I shouldn't just say just a structure in a rock, but you know what I mean. It's not a ship. So looking at these structures, looking at this marina, you know what I mean, and look at the layering. You have the pier, the docks, but then you have like this layering happening. First floor, second floor, bridges across, little tunnels. It's built, it's structured. They had like the best buildings in the game or something like that. The best crafts and all that other stuff. Even like look at the layering here. It almost looks like a boat, like a warship. You know what I mean? With the like this would be like the captain's and whatever, and then this is a radar and whatever. It almost looks like it. So I kind of have these books here. Kind of just surrounding myself with that energy that, you know what I mean. That's what they talk about all the time, right? You got to surround yourself with good people, good vibes, good energy, good all that good stuff, right? I get good concept art books. They help me out. I love them. So yeah, while I'm working on this, I'm thinking about all that stuff, and this is this type of thing that I was talking about when I was working on these, and I called it Foundlantis. I call this netting, because I wanted to net things. So I wanted to build this page so that way I can layer it according to all the squares that I have, so I have points of interest, and then I can kind of just build. And what I kind of want to do is look at it like a boat, almost like that's a boat, and it's poking out at the top, and it kind of got built, and there's this land, this growth, this land that just grew, almost like it's on like a boat, like a chia pet boat. You know what I mean? You throw a rubber ducky chia pet in the ocean, and you get this monsoon castle. Like, so I kind of wanted to do this and like layer it and do exactly like what I'm talking about. Throw this Karja structure, this warship type of structure, layering it so that way it has like this neat, like tactical, rigid feel to it, almost like a castle structure. You know what I mean? Don't ask me why I'm drawing so many castles. I just like it. So yeah. I want to follow this a little bit more. So those are set up 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3. So this is like a 1 2, and this is like a 1 2 3 1 2 3, and this is like a 1 2 3 4. Okay. So this is like 1 2 3 4, and 1 2 3, and 1 2. We have this. Even this little mistake of making this line go way out there like this, I might turn that into something, since I'm trying to find like structure. So what am I talking about structure in these old ancient boats? Oh, are we done rendering? All right. Let's take a mental note of that, and we will get back to it.